Zimbabwe cash crisis. We're talking about Venezuela once again. Systemic important banks.
They removed the 1,000
called monetary awareness. Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RT News updates. And so came across an article I want to share with you briefly, and it has to do with the problems of how inflated the housing market is, as well as how problematic it is for those that are not able to earn a living, or as they say, the minimum wage these days. And so in this article here from Yahoo Finance, they're talking about how it's a national crisis, it's a national problem. There's a growing issue in regards to not enough people being able to afford housing as housing prices continue to skyrocket. And so I actually want to comment on this a little bit and share my thoughts as to what the origins of all this is, of which I'm sure you can agree upon it. But before I dive into this article, as always,
the next recession.
Recession will be a recession.
We're going to hit a recession.
The date of the next recession.
A U.S.-only recession typically lasts 8 to 10 months.
A crash is coming. Now, whether it's 6 months from now, 12 months, 36 months, no one knows.
If you have the right plan to set up, you can make a lot of money from this.
Article on Yahoo Finance, and once again I would encourage you guys to take a minute to listen to this little short clip here, but it has to do with a recent survey done by the NLIHEC Out of Reach report, and it's quoted as saying, in only 10% of U.S. counties can a full-time worker earning the average renter's wage afford a modest 2-bedroom rental home at fair market rent, working a standard 40-hour work week. So only 10% of the U.S. counties can a full-time worker actually afford to live in that particular area. And so here's a map here that I wanted to highlight, because it talks about just affording a 2-bedroom apartment or house or whatever it might be. It says the National Low-Income Housing Coalition analyzed data to identify hourly wages needed to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in 50 U.S. cities. And so here we have some incredibly astronomical numbers as far as hourly wages that would be needed in order to, as it said here, afford a 2-bedroom apartment. And so you got, just throw out a couple of cities here. In Honolulu, close to $40 an hour would be needed for Hawaii. And of course, an island, very expensive. So ultimately, as I always mentioned before, along the coastal areas is where the most hourly wage is needed in order to exist there. And so in California, Los Angeles, $34.44 would be needed. And then if we go up towards the New England area, we have Boston areas, $42 an hour would be needed to actually rent just somewhere to lay your head at. And then we go down here actually to what's as they're saying here, the problem is the minimum wage needs to be increased. And so that once again becomes problematic, because if you increase the minimum wage, all that's going to ultimately do is it's going to force employers to have to make tough decisions. And unfortunately, most people refuse to admit that employment or having a job, it's not the employer's responsibility to provide anything more other than what it takes for you to settle for employment at that position and to come back the next day or come back that following Monday. And so the very fact that they're arguing the need to increase the minimum wage lets me know that they're not actual business owners that are actually out here producing goods and services for the free market, because if they were, they would understand it wouldn't be so easy to just raise the minimum wage. They would have to address the true problem of the issue. And so several things come out here. Housing is not affordable and people don't earn enough. What are the two primary responsibilities of the central bank itself, our Federal Reserve Bank? It's price stability and it's maximum employment. So the very two issues people are arguing against, they can't afford housing and they don't make enough, those are the exact same two mandates that the central bank, the Federal Reserve, is responsible for. So ultimately, if you really cared, if you really knew about the monetary matters and the true issues at hand, you would be able to pinpoint the problems back to the source, which happens to be the banks, the banking sector. Not only the central bank, but also the commercial banks, because it's two primary financial or monetary policies that are in play that are the reason for unaffordable housing and people not being able to afford to live in these houses, or nevertheless, just the overall cost of living in general. And it has to do with the fractional reserve banking model that commercial banks are able to utilize when it comes to them being able to basically 10 times the amount of deposits in their possession and create digital currency, which is a primary reason for the fact that the housing market is overly inflated. But then it goes back to the central bank, the very nature of a private institution that exists for the sole purposes of making sure that the banking sector operates with a profit at the expense of the citizens. So what we're experiencing here is not necessarily a housing problem or a wage problem. It's the very nature of our monetary system people have not really addressed, because the two primary mandates that the central bank is responsible for is starting to be exposed for as a lie, more so, because you have people talking about they can't afford housing and housing too expensive. And those are two of the same mandates that the central bank is responsible for. So when I hear people talking about raise minimum wage, clearly that lets me know they are of the employee mindset, what they don't understand what it means to run a business and the cost behind that. Because every business, the sole reason a business, institution, or a company, however you want to label it, is in business is to serve and to bring products into the market and to receive a profit, more than likely for the profit shareholder, depending on if it's a large corporation or not. But even a small business owner is supplying a service or a good into the market, but yet they need some profit. They need to profit off that in order to actually take care of their expenditures, but more importantly, just reap the rewards of hard work and ideas that's implemented into society. So when I see things like this and I hear politicians, talk about the need to raise the wages, we need higher wages. No, you don't really know what you're asking for, because if you get higher wages, you will get more unemployment, which will then cause more need for the government to implement more of their fiscal irresponsible policies into existence. So more information here if you guys are interested, but wanted to take a quick minute and just share my thoughts on how this whole situation is very problematic and it cannot exist for much longer. So I think, in my opinion, we're starting to witness the side effects of a central bank model of debt creation over the actual care and the needs and necessities of the citizens themselves in the U.S. as well as every other country. So I'm curious to find out what you think. Just wanted to take a quick minute to bring this article to your attention. Definitely read more for yourself from the article in the description. But more importantly, if you find this informative, give it a thumbs up and get this out to people so they can realize that, once again, you have people out here speaking on behalf of the public, but yet they're not really informed and really pointing the blame back to where it originates at. And it has to do with A, blaming the banks, and B, getting at your political figures for allowing the central banks to be a crutch for them to run up debts the way they have. So other than that, hope all's well. Definitely leave a comment and let me know what you think. Peace.